There's been a lot of debate on where Josh Allen ranks among NFL quarterbacks, but has his career been a success or a failure so far? We'll discuss it on a Thursday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to a Thursday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Tyler Rowland, local expert for the Locked On Titans podcast. Here with my co-host, Alex Clancy, local expert for the Locked On Cardinals podcast. It is a Thursday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as the playoffs wind down. The sports stop sporting like we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We're going to be talking about some top 10 quarterback rankings today, but making some pit stops along the way to have some discussions on some interesting characters. First and foremost, Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills. Where is his correct rank? His career so far, has he maximized the talent? Should we look at it as a failure or a success? We'll discuss also a little home cooking. Kyler Murray. Is he going to be able to have a comeback here, and where would he rank amongst these quarterbacks if he does? And then training camps are off to a quick start here in the middle of July. We'll talk about who we need to watch for as these camps do kick off. Before we get into all of that, though, thanks again for making Locked On NFL your first listen each and every day. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. But Alex, I'm going to throw up quarterback rankings here, or go through the quarterback rankings that our guys from Locked On NFL scouting with the draft dudes did. Patrick Mahomes 1, Josh Allen 2, Joe Burrow 3, Matthew Stafford at number 4, Lamar Jackson 5, Dak Prescott 6, Justin Herbert 7, Kirk Cousins at 8, 9, Jared Goff, who Alex is a Jared Goff truther, of course, so love seeing that. And then number 10, Jordan Love. Jordan Love getting some love in the top 10, but kind of want to have a discussion about Josh Allen first and foremost. He's at number 2. We've seen some quarterback rankings recently that have him at 3, maybe even at 4, behind a Burrow and a Lamar. Where exactly would you have Josh Allen ranked? And as I talked about before, with the success that the Bills have had, sure, but they haven't been able to get over the top, and Josh Allen has had some great moments and some low moments. Where would you rank him? And has this been a success so far, or has it been a failure?
Yeah, he's number 2. That's right. He's the Phil Mickelson of this generation, with Patrick Mahomes being Tiger Woods. I mean, I don't think it's really. Do you remember we talked a couple of weeks ago about the different tiers of quarterbacks, and just like going back to the paying homage to it was Tom Brady, and then it was Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Big Ben, Phillip Rivers a little bit. There was that second tier, and then there was everybody else. In my opinion, Josh Allen is the only person at the second tier. Joe Burrow is going off reputation alone at this point. I don't think he's shown anything in the last 2 years, whether it be injury or otherwise, to put him ahead Lamar Jackson, let alone Dak Prescott. Say what you want about Dak. He churns out numbers during the regular season.
He does.
And listen, we're not cowboy people on this show, but you got to give credit where credit's due with Dak Prescott. I think Joe Burrow is way too high here, and he made the Super Bowl a handful of years ago. He's been injured ever since. The Jamar Chase trade, or the Jamar Chase draft point. Say what you want. Penny Sewell would probably be better to keep him up, erect in the backfield instead of collecting dirt like he has so much. With Josh Allen specifically, I think this is much more of an indicator of how hard it is to win a Super Bowl than it is him specifically. Okay, there's been a lot of national media pub about, recently over the last couple of days, like, oh, Josh Allen's, it's just numbers and things like that. It's like, you want to put him as the Drew Brees of this generation? Fine, because it's the same thing. Drew Brees won a Super Bowl, but I think Josh Allen is getting Patrick Mahomes a lot more than this being a failure. I mean, he did everything he had to do. They scored 2 touchdowns in a minute, whatever, had 13 seconds left on the clock, and they end up losing to the best quarterback we've seen since Tom Brady in overtime. What do you want him to do? Him and Gabe Davis had a ridiculous fourth quarter, and they did everything but win the game. So I think that this is, while he's not perfect, nobody is. He plays every game. He's the heart of that city. He's the heart of that team, and he's an absolute poster child for what you want your quarterback to be. I don't know what you expect when you've got maybe who's going to go down as the best quarterback in the history of football playing at the same time as he is, and you make that a fault on him.
Well, I'll tell you what we expect to win a Super Bowl. That's what I expect. Josh Allen may have more raw talent than Patrick Mahomes with his rushing ability,
I agree
his
with that.
size, his arm strength. Like he may very well. Like that's a debate worth having. I'm not saying one's immediately right. Patrick Mahomes probably the favorite in that discussion, but I don't think it's absurd to say that. And I guess I understand the overall point of Josh Allen's not the first quarterback taken in his draft. Buffalo was really down on their luck before he showed up. They've made some deep postseason runs. He's been absolutely phenomenal and been exciting to watch. I could see how someone would look at the conversation and say, how in the world could you ever paint that as a failure? How could that ever be a failure? But at the end of the day, whether people like it or not, whether it's right or wrong, we're going to look back on the Josh Allen era with Buffalo Bills. And if they don't win a Super Bowl and beat Patrick Mahomes once and at least get to a Super Bowl after beating Patrick Mahomes, or even without it, even without beating Patrick Mahomes, if the Buffalo Bills under Josh Allen don't get to a Super Bowl, don't win something meaningful, then it's going to be viewed as a failure, because the reason for that is because of what you said. He has all the talent. They've done all the right things. So whether it's right, wrong, indifferent, if they don't find a way to at least slay the draft, like Tom Brady is better than Peyton Manning. It's not close. But Peyton Manning had his get backs. He at least had some pelts on the wall where he could say, yeah, the other guy's better, but I still got mine too.
Yeah.
To me, that has to be the case. Josh Allen has to get something, or they didn't take advantage of the talent and they didn't accomplish what they were good enough to accomplish. And that would be, in some ways, be a failure.
Yeah, listen, that last part you said is spot on. I agree, but I will tell you this, and I don't know if I actually believe this or not, but it's something to bring up. And this is a fun one to do just, because it's summer and everything, but Tom Brady wouldn't have won as much if he wasn't in New England, in my opinion. If Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen were flipped, Josh Allen would have won a Super Bowl, regardless of the talent that they had. And I'm sure Patrick Mahomes would have done fine, and maybe he would have won too. Maybe he's that special. But the Andy Reid, Eric Bieniemy, just Fort Knox of you are going to be great under my tutelage is something that can't get overlooked. Now, it's not an exact science. Maybe it's not true. Obviously, it's all in la la land because it's never going to happen. But I do believe that does have something to do with it as well. And I'll tell you what, if it wasn't Ken Dorsey and it was Brian Daboll over the last couple of years, we could be speaking a different tune as well, because coaching is so important when it comes to quarterbacking. And less is more a lot of times. But this offense with them is, all right, Josh, that's it. All right, just go do it. And it's something that they finally learned how to run the ball last year. Look at what Devin Singletary did in Houston. Look at what he did in 1 year. You're telling me that if they didn't run the ball 40% more, that they maybe wouldn't have won more games, bled more clock, and maybe won more playoff games? Like, you are the product of your surroundings as well, regardless of how talented you are. And I think that other quarterbacks have had better opportunities and better coaching than Josh Allen. It's not an excuse, but you're right. It's win or bust, but 95% of quarterbacks then would have been failures regardless of how many regular season games they won. So I don't think it's one or the other. And that's why, you still kind of root for the kid,
here's
right?
what I would say. 99% of quarterbacks aren't as talented as Josh Allen. So I don't hold them to the same standard that I would hold him. But what I would say is I don't think that Josh Allen would have won the Super Bowl last year if you switched him and Pat
No.
Mahomes.
Last year's different. Last year's different.
Right.
I'm saying early on with Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, like that shows how great Patrick Mahomes is. He wins games he shouldn't. He shouldn't have any business winning.
Yeah, I'm with you there, but there's a lot of meat on that bone. Obviously, these discussions will bleed into the regular season as soon as it comes around. But there's a quarterback that wasn't in the top 10 of that ranking that Alex has some home cooking on, and I'm excited to hear about it. Can Kyler Murray make a comeback into the top 10 quarterbacks in this league? We're going to discuss that, and training camps are starting all around the NFL. Who are some guys who need to get off to a fast start? We're getting into all of that on today's Thursday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. Before we continue, though, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. Look, when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, football fans, let's continue this Thursday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. Talked about Josh Allen's ranking, the conversation about him going into this season and where things are at in Buffalo. But now we want to get out of the top 10 and maybe talk about some guys who could make a comeback into the top 10 with a good season. Going to throw the top 10 up one more time here. Patrick Mahomes at 1, Josh Allen at 2, Joe Burrow at 3, Matthew Stafford at 4, Lamar Jackson at 5, Dak Prescott at 6, Justin Herbert at 7, Kirk Cousins at 8, Jared Goff at 9, Jordan Love at 10. Of course, this comes from our guys over at Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes. If you want some real inside football knowledge, make sure to check out that podcast as well. Those guys do great work. And my guy Joe Marino, who covers the Buffalo Bills for us on Locked On Bills as well, does that show, and he would obviously enjoy the Josh Allen conversation as he's having a lot of it himself. But speaking of some home cooking, Kyler Murray was not in the top 10. Alex, you cover the team every day. It's a quarterback who's had injuries, coaching change, incompetence around him, as you've explained. Tell us why you think Kyler Murray could have a comeback season this year.
Yeah, first off, I don't think Kyler Murray's a top 10 quarterback as it currently sits. Pull up that list really quick one more time.
Right, as it currently sits. I'm curious to think if you can get back to that with a good performance this year.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, how many guys in the top 10 right now do you expect to put up their average numbers in a game you must win? Like 5 of those? You know, you're not trusting Justin Herbert. You're not trusting Dak. You're not trusting Jordan Love yet. Do you trust Kirk Cousins? Like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow when he's healthy. Matt Stafford, I think, is in a perfect spot there by the guys. I've kind of come full circle on Matt Stafford, where it's like he just produces, and he's a dude, and it doesn't matter if they're healthy or not. He just produces. Like it's a great thing to see as he goes into his twilight years. But with Kyler Murray, the interesting thing about it, Tyler, and it's something that you've kind of been remiss, and you can pull that whenever. It's kind of been remiss in Tennessee with where you've covered, where a quarterback hasn't had the perfect ecosystem or the perfect culture. The culture in Tennessee for a long time was Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill. You just live off that. With Kyler Murray, what he's got now in Phoenix is, first off, the best offensive line he's had since he's come into the league. He's got a top 5 tight end. He's got a top 12 running back when healthy in James Conner, even though he's one of the more undervalued guys in the NFL. And you've got one of the most fun young wide receiver cores in the NFL with Marvin Harrison Jr. if he takes that leap to wide receiver 1 right away. But all encompassing in that is Drew Petzing's offense. And one thing kind of counterintuitive to what we were talking about with Josh Allen is Kyler Murray's comeback this year could very much look like 22 for 27, 225 yards, 2 touchdowns, maybe a pick, 30 yards rushing with half a touchdown a game. Like that's what it's going to look like. You don't need to have the 400 all-purpose yards, 3 touchdowns in the air, 1 on the ground, and some incredible 40-yard play to win a game. It's about consistency within a system. Kyler Murray now has consistency. He now has a system. He's now matured enough in this system to realize, it doesn't have to be dysfunctional. And everything we've seen this offseason is all you can say, Tyler, is that he's ready to take that jump into that relevant potential top 10 quarterback conversation. And now he just has to do it. There's no excuse to where he won't do it anymore. It either stays the same or it gets better. If he regresses, we're going to be having much different conversations. But I do think, and even where you are across the country, you've got to see the cards lining up for Kyler Murray to explode in 2024, or he won't, and they'll find a better option. I just don't see the latter happening at this point.
I agree. It's a make or break season because they've added more pieces around him. Obviously, the coaching has improved from what he had before with Cliff Kingsbury. That seems fair. So the team is getting better. And Kyler Murray's one of those forgotten quarterbacks. He was the shiny new toy a couple of years ago when they had DeAndre Hopkins. They were making the push. And now he's one of those guys who's kind of been forgotten. So I think he needs a good season to, get back in that conversation and not fall by the wayside. I found interesting some of the guys who weren't in that top 10, like Kyler Murray as well, like no CJ Stroud in there. I think that was pretty interesting. Obviously, no Tua is in there, no Jalen Hurts in there. There are some quarterbacks, no Aaron Rodgers in there, of course, which I think is fair. But out of all those quarterbacks, I think Ross and Luke talked about this earlier this week. Is CJ Stroud, should he be considered top 10 right now? I think that he should be. So obviously I would say he'll be somebody who can jump in there, but I think it's interesting the guys who might be able to make a push. No Brock Purdy in there. I think by this time next year, we could really be looking at, it's funny because, we talked about who's leading the young Avengers. Is it, CJ Stroud or Brock Purdy? I think both of them are going to be solidly considered top 10 quarterbacks. And a guy like, Kirk Cousins, a guy like Dak Prescott, Jared Goff could maybe considered a little bit lower, not completely dropping down, but a little bit lower. So I do find it interesting, the guys that are in it. And the thing about these rankings is they really do change every single year. So you could see a guy like Kyler Murray jump in, and it could be more obvious that a certain guy is top 10. Is there anybody out of those or anybody else I didn't mention who you think could maybe jump in other than Kyler Murray with a good season?
No, I mean, unless Caleb Williams makes the playoffs his rookie year and he's just everything people think he can be. It's interesting, Tyler. Like Kyler Murray is kind of like a microcosm of where we are with quarterbacks now, not in skill position or not in play, not in anything like that. But that whole changing of the guard thing, it doesn't happen anymore because it overlaps so quickly. It's not like there's these three guys who are great forever. And then, there's this next group of guys. It's every year. Whether it be a third-year guy or a rookie coming in, like we've never been more quarterback rich. Josh Allen looks like an old dude, and he's still in his absolute prime, And then you have guys like Jordan Love who came out of bleeping nowhere. That's the only thing. I don't know why he's up there instead of CJ Stroud. Like maybe he's 11. I didn't see the full list, but like that's that shows that like if you don't have a good quarterback, you're screwed.
You're in trouble.
And it's like with Kyler Murray, it's like the question marks are no longer, is he the guy? It's, is he enough of the guy to be able to lead this team to more wins than losses and maybe get lucky in the playoffs? And there's so many guys like that. Like the middle class is so large now. And that's why I have Josh Allen by himself because he's the most accomplished. Like, yeah, Joe Burrow made a Super Bowl. Joe Burrow can't stay healthy. Josh Allen plays every game. The best ability is availability.
Yeah.
So it's something that, him and Patrick Mahomes share, even though Mahomes has made a handful of games. But yeah, Kyler Murray is kind of the microcosm of this big middle class of like, who's next?
Right.
Who can put together a great 2024 to be thrust into the top 10 come 2025?
Yeah, and I would say looking at the rankings where things kind of like starting at number 8 with Kirk Cousins, I feel like 8 to 20 fluctuate so much depending on who's playing, what week, year to year, things like that. So it's one of those things that's very delicate. But speaking of that, since it's so delicate, some of these quarterbacks need to get off to a very fast start so they come out of the gate hot and play much better this year. And with training camps kicking off around the NFL, at least for the rookies, there's some of these quarterbacks that need to come out on fire. We're going to talk about quarterbacks that need a quick start to training camp. Before we do that, though,
this episode of Locked On NFL Thursday is brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports. Tyler loves sports. I love them so much I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep up with the sports going, whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. Maybe you didn't bet on is Monday's national anthem going to be the worst ever? I was assuming it'd be like plus 20 million if it were a thing, but that might have come to fruition. If you want to look at the future where you can pick the Boston Celtics, if you want to take the odds on favorite for the NBA champion come next season, the NFL MVP, who's going to win the Super Bowl. There's so many things that FanDuel has for you just sitting there. This summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone. every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball.
All right, Alex, final segment, Thursday edition, Locked On NFL. We've talked about Josh Allen and his career to this point, what the vibes are surrounding his career, where he ranks among NFL quarterbacks. Talked about some guys who aren't in the top 10 who could make that jump into the top 10. Kyler Murray being one of them for sure and has the talent to do so. But football's right around the corner, and you never really feel that as much as when you see that there are teams kicking off training camp this week. So earlier this week, saw some teams: Bills, Bears, Chargers, Chiefs, Dolphins, Giants, Saints, 49ers, all reporting to training camp. And there are some of these players, specifically these quarterbacks. It is a quarterback-centric show, so we'll keep that going, who really need to get off to a good start. And I'm looking at, some of these teams, obviously Giants and 49ers, Dolphins, Chiefs, Bills, Bears. The one that stands out to me is clearly the Bears. Caleb Williams, rookie quarterback. They're expected to be good right away. People are saying that this is the best supporting cast a number one overall pick quarterback has ever been drafted into. And the people in Chicago, when you take a number one quarterback these days, they want to come in. They want to win right away. That's the way they built the team. It's not a slow burn. They're ready to go. So if they want to do what they think that they're supposed to do in Chicago this year, Caleb Williams better be as good as advertised. And he needs to get off to a quick start in training camp and get on a roll to make that a possibility.
Yeah, and Roman Dunze signed his rookie scale deal a couple days ago, I believe, on Tuesday.
Caleb Williams still hasn't signed his. Yeah. So him and J.J. McCarthy fighting over when they get their money on their deal and how quick they get it, that could delay things too. So that's part of it.
I think this is all just, it happens every year. And he'll get it. He'll get it how he wants it. They wouldn't have drafted him number one if they didn't know. With what he's done in college, there's a little diva in him. So sure. It's time to, it's their job. It's Ryan Poles' job to curtail that very quickly. Matty Ruflis' job to curtail that really quickly. Just move off into the wild blue yonder that looks to be positive football at Soldier Field, which is absolutely wild. Yeah. And I mean, I think that for popcorn, the popcorn index, Caleb Williams, that's going to be the most fun right away because number one pick, and that's what we've been waiting for the last couple seasons. For me, there's a couple okay, so the list: Bills, Bears, Chargers, Chiefs, Dolphins, Giants, Saints, 49ers. Okay, so the Saints, not in relevancy, at least for this season. The Giants, kind of boring. But then the other teams, I have some Chargers malaise, even though it's Jim Harbaugh. It's okay, I don't care. It's not Jim Harbaugh's fault that there's this malaise with the Chargers. Right, you and I are going to talk about Chiefs, Chargers. Every time they're playing, it's going to be our favorite game to watch. We do it every year. Okay, that's not going to change. This is going to be a much more boring Chargers team. And if anybody that listens to Locked On Cardinals listening now, boring wins. Boring is okay. Chiefs football is boring. Chiefs football was very boring last year. Ravens football is boring. It's boring. You win. Steelers football, it's boring. Malaise there. Dolphins, malaise. I don't care. I don't care anymore. I do care, but the fun stuff until Tua gets paid or doesn't, that's going to be the story. So whatever happens on the field doesn't really matter for me.
Well, I would say he needs a quick start because of that. He's trying to get his contract.
But I think they know already, dude. I think they know already.
Right.
And with
enough time.
With that, the biggest quarterback story for me is Brock Purdy in the 49ers. Because and I think you'll agree with me on this. I don't think this is you could say the Chiefs because there's even more, oh man, we won again. They had to go for 3 kind of thing.
Right.
The Brock Purdy bricks are going to crumble everything around him if they pay him, or the trust around the 49ers and their quarterback, ties. If they don't pay him, what is a quarterback going to have to do to get a contract from the 49ers if he doesn't deserve a contract after this year? So that's the one. It's he's got to be perfect, and that sucks, and that's unfair. But for him to get that second contract, they've got to make at least the NFC Championship game this year, if not the Super Bowl, if not win it. And that's something that has to start day one.
Well, that's the problem with high expectations is you can do really, really well, all things considered, and it still be a failure, which kind of is full circle with the Josh Allen conversation. You know what I mean? So I'm with you there. I do want to point out and go back to the Giants, though, because with Drew Lock as the backup, and I think the Giants are a prime team to go get a quarterback next year. I mean, pretty obvious they were stooping around trying to get up to number 3 this year to get Drake May. So I think that the Giants could quickly bench Daniel Jones if things don't go well because they're worried about paying him with injuries. You know what I mean? We've seen teams do this a lot lately. They don't want to have to guarantee the money with an injury, so they just sit the guy at the end of the year. I think the Giants could do that early in the season rather than late in the season if Daniel Jones doesn't take care of business, because I think the other reality is I think Brian Dable may be on the hot seat as well.
Yeah.
And, I don't think that would maybe be the right thing, but I think that's a reality. They want things to move quick in New York. So I think Daniel Jones is somebody who absolutely needs to get off to a hot start. But do you have any other candidates there? I think that's about all of them.
Yeah, that's about it. I mean, one that was really smart about the Giants. Like, it shows that not all great coordinators are great head coaches, and also great coordinators need to go to a good situation. Brian Dable's had no favors. He's had 0 favors given to him. Look at that. I mean, the offense has been awful.
Right.
It's been absolutely
the O-line hasn't been great.
Yeah, even
the
though
wide receivers are the worst in the league.
Yeah, by a long shot. And then after getting rid of Evan Ingram, like they've had no weapons aside from Saquon. Now, with that, let me ask you about Daniel Jones, because say Daniel Jones does start hot and he has a couple really good games early on in the season, but the Giants aren't going to contend for the NFC East title. They're not going to contend for a playoff spot. Do you sell high on Daniel Jones if he's playing well, even though he's got the injuries in his contract? Like, let me ask you this. How many teams would Daniel Jones playing at his best would be getting an upgrade by a wide margin enough to trade for him? You probably only have to give a 4th-round pick for him. Like, it's not going to be a lot to trade for Daniel Jones and inevitably either have to franchise tag him to start or have him be a backup or, fight for the starting role with your team.
I don't think that they would do that because you could trade it. I would rather let him walk as a free agent and get a compensatory pick, or I guess they would probably have to cut him because his contract's not up. So, yeah, I mean, they would probably consider it. I mean, the optics would be really, really bad, and they would be worried that they would have egg on their face if he did play well. But I think, maybe like 10 teams would do that, maybe less with all the young quarterbacks coming in. I mean, would you rather have Bo Nix or Daniel Jones? Would you rather have Derek Carr or Daniel Jones? Like, I just don't know that it's enough of an upgrade. Do want to note, though, Caleb Williams did sign his contract. So earlier in the show when we were recording, he had not, but that information has come through. So he signed, and that'll probably follow with a domino of J.J. McCarthy getting signed too. But, yeah, the Daniel Jones thing is going to be interesting to watch. Him at his best is a decent player, but I don't know that it's enough for people to really give up anything. But that's going to do it for us today on a Thursday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Tyler Rowland, here with Alex Clancy. As I tell you guys every week, start your weekend early and stay safe out there.